Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our last webinar for 2020, so we appreciate you all taking the time. I know it's a busy time of the year with the holidays and everything. My name is Megan Morse, and I'm one of the product consultants here for Softvision Suite. And our topic today is going to be focused on the budgeting process and reviewing the best approach for creating and managing your financial budgets within our system. Okay. So just a quick introduction to our team here. We are the retail consulting team that runs these monthly webinars and is assigned to each of you as your direct point of contact in case you have any questions or need support with anything within our system. You can always reach out to us directly. Housekeeping reminder, we do have everyone on mute just to reduce the background noise. So if you have any questions or comments, please use the Q&A icon located at the bottom of the screen, and we will address those throughout the session. A recording of this webinar will be made available on our Freshdesk support site as well as at the Cognizant YouTube site as well. So once the recording is available, we'll actually send you out a link to that, but you can always access any of the previously recorded webinars at either of those locations. All right, so for our agenda today, we will be going through and beginning with just discussing the importance of budgeting at that high level for your financial success. And then we'll get into more detail on defining the high-level budgets and how you can define those and work them in conjunction with your marketing team. And then reviewing some of the strategies that we would recommend you consider as you start your planning for 2021, especially being that 2020 has been such a unique year, and what we're hearing other clients doing to kind of get around that, or recommendations that we've heard in just the marketplace in general. And then we'll also go through how budget creation is done and the update process, and handling all of that within the dashboard. All right. So just to start off here with the business purpose of budgeting. So we have created the budgeting process within our system so that you can define that financial strategy at that high level across your total company, channels, and hierarchy levels. We will allow you to define this up front and then have the ability to manage it at the level most important to you using the top-down, bottom-up approach. So once you get that information into the system, you'll be able to manage it at the division, the department, the merchandise level that makes sense for your business and what you're trying to accomplish at that point in time. You do always have access to the historical data and the selling so that you can use that as a basis for your plans, and I'll also just use that to determine how you want to move forward with that upcoming season, implying increases and decreases and things like that. Some of the key questions that we recommend that you take a look at before you begin your budgeting process and definition is really the first one is, what are the expected sales that you are planning for this time frame? Based off of this value, then you'll start to consider how much on hand will I need to produce those projected sales, and then also determine any kind of additional purchases that will be needed to be placed during that season. So any items that you may be chasing, maybe best sellers, along with also just your replenishment and your ongoing items, and having budget set aside for those in season. And then also considering your markdowns, and also at what point in time you'll plan to take them to help generate the sales and the revenue that you're anticipating. And then the last one, which is really that key indicator that we all use, is the gross margin dollars and the percent. So what is that required dollars and percentages that you want to achieve to get that desired profit? So just some key questions that are a good thing to kind of take a step back and consider as you start to define your budgets here. Okay, so getting into the budget creation process. So to begin with, in our system, the first step would be defining your budgets at that total offer level. So that's done within the marketing module under the offer setup screen that you see here. So here's where you're going to define or create that new offer, identify what that is, the description, as well as also start to manage the metrics here down below in the planning statuses. So moving on to the next slide here and getting a little more focused on those macro metrics themselves. So these are those metrics that you are typically getting from your marketing team, and they're mainly focused in 3 areas here. So what is the expected revenue, units, and orders that this offer or this plan will generate? And then we use this data then to seed and create as the basis of your offer within the map screen. It is important to remember not only defining this upfront pre-season as you're beginning your planning process, but also coming back in here and updating this post-season with actual information. These metrics are used in various calculations and to help determine the forecast throughout the system. So it's important to keep them up to date to help with your forecast accuracy and things like that. Okay, and with that, I'll pass it on to Janine to continue with our budgeting topic.
Thanks, Megan. So in addition to some of those key questions that Megan referenced, one of the unique challenges that we have in going into budget planning for 2021 and even further out is what do we do? What does it look like after COVID? So optimistically, or rather people had seen some real positive growth during that pandemic, upticks in particular product categories and subcategories. So taking that into account as you're planning forward, discussions that we've had with clients is they believe that they've really kind of captured a larger audience with those growth categories. So they are planning growth continued into next year, maybe not to some of the levels that they saw this year. But with that in mind, we had such a surge in some of that demand that it's put just such a strain on the supply chain, and it's created lots of inventory challenges. We're seeing shortages in equipment, raw materials. It's hard to get the raw materials to get manufactured. It's tough to get trucks. It's tough to get containers to get the inventory over here. Some people are seeing 6 to 7 month delays before they're going to get product in to be able to fill the need that they've got going on. So obviously those are constraints you need to keep in mind as you're planning your budget. Another sort of positive that's come out of that is because there's been such demand and a surge, particularly in holiday shopping, that many clients are not having to go into as deep of a sales or markdown strategy, because where you're running out of product, a lot of the customers are transferring and purchasing what you do have. So that is also something to take into account when you're planning your budget for next year. And other things that are still up in the air, the economy, and the election, particularly here in the States, is got everybody a little bit on edge, and how do we absorb that, and what does that mean to our business go forward next year? So one of the things that I would really like from you as our client base is individually we've talked, and some people for a baseline for 2020 are using 2019 as the base to kind of start, and then addressing some of those categories where they might want to plan growth in. But we'd really like to hear from you what you're doing, and be able to kind of share that with the group. This is a perfect area to do that in with the webinar. So if you do have any insight that you'd like to share with the group, we'd love to hear it. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Linda.
Thanks, Janine. So as Megan mentioned, budgeting is a great tool to determine if your high level, assortment, your forecasts are meeting your company revenue and margin objectives or your hurdle rates. So within our MAPS planning screen, on the budget section of the screen, are lines listing that marketing or macro budget, as we call it. So in some instances, merchandising may not always know what that macro budget is. So in this instance, what we recommend is clients take a look at their last year, 3-year or 5-year plan and look at what the increase is over last year, that they can plan at least a starting level to go forward, because lead times may require they need to make those purchases and have to have some forecast in season. And then later, once you get a more finalized budget, you can update that macro information pre-season if needed. So your budget is started, we assign it at the company level. You have the option that you can break this down to the category or subcategory level. And Janine's going to be reviewing various ways that we can enter that budget level data within the system. But typically, when you first get started, your budget information will start out by matching your macro. So budgets are a great tool to validate that your assortment pre-season and in-season is rolling up to your forecasting needs, to see, a quick high level to compare how projections are doing to what your overall forecasts were. But key is just that high level view to look at revenue margin or even contribution when digging in. So when creating the budget, it allows users to manage the information at minimum at an offer level. Our recommended best practice is that people minimum best practice, I should say, is that people enter budgets and take it down to a category level. Subcategory is available if your company is already managing at that level, but that's a lot of detail if you aren't already doing so. And so again, Janine's going to pop in next as to how do we go through those screens and get that budget level information entered.
Excellent, thanks. So the very first step when preparing a budget, when you're in the map screen and the planning screen, is I select the offer that I want to start working on. The very first thing that's going to pop up and require you to do is to configure the offer and configure what view you want for that budget. So, excuse me. So you'll want to go ahead and create that to start. When you get the pop-up, we give you 3 variations that you can choose. So there's the offer and then all the products. We give you the offer to the category level that Linda was referring to. And then we do give you the option to plan the budget down to the subcategory level. So the budget view is outlined in blue and the viewing layout will be outlined in red. The only view that's kind of permanent would be the budget view. The viewing layout, you can pick any one of those scenarios at any given time. So what we'd like to call out, and you do get a warning message that says the initial budget layout that you save is permanent and can't be changed. So if you decide that you're planning down to the subcategory, but have decided not to, that's not to the level of detail you want to go to and you want it to be a category, you would require our technical support team to make that change for you. So just want to call that out, make sure you have determined to what layer you want to budget to and then set that. The next step with getting your budget baseline is we recommend you bring in a comparable offer. And the comparable offer, the approach to take is typically this year versus last year scenario. So if I am planning a summer drop 1 for this year, I would pull in my comparable offer from the previous year. And then another option is the summer book that I'm planning. If I know that the previous season, so say spring, has product that's moving forward, I might want to bring that offer in as a comparable as well. You do have the option to pull in more than one at a time. The other important step to doing the comparable is you want to make sure that you pull in the appropriate versions of those comparable offers. So in the scenario where I mentioned I'm going to pull in last year's summer book, I would want to pull in my actual version. So that is going to show me all of the sales that accrued in that last year's book, and I'll bring the actual in. In the scenario where I've mentioned you want to pull in the spring book, and that's a more current book, you would want to pay attention to the percent complete of that offer to determine if you wanted to bring in a projected version or if you want to pull in the work version in order to do that. So the comparable offer is, again, this is where we're going to create our baseline. So when I've selected my versions, I hit my arrow button, I save it, it's going to build in the comparable offer and bring in all the products and SKUs into the planning screen. Once that's done, our next step is to actually create the budget. So we have two ways to do that. So the first one I'm going to go into is the create and edit, and then I'll show you the actuals. So when you click on create and edit, you have a screen where you select the comparable offer, and it will pull in the values from that offer's version. So we give you number of products, revenue, margin, all the data elements that you see there. And you have the ability to select them. So do I want to use that number? And you can select all, pick just a few that make sense to you. We also give you a percent change option. So you could increase. So if you believe there's going to be growth this year over last year, for an example, you can add in a positive percent. If you believe that it's not going to do as well, you also have the option to pull it down. That first arrow bar lets you see results. So if you need to do any further tweaking in regards to the percent, you can do that. Once you have the results you like, that final arrow bar will pull it over. So in this screen, and where people will come here to create the budget, is if you want to plan new product and repeat product for an offer. So we give you the option to plan the repeat, and then it will go ahead and it will calculate the balance for the new. We also give you the option to allow this budget to roll completely down. So once you're happy with that, you simply accept and exit. So when I come in out of that creating budget screen, now my budget grid has the repeated new, and I'll also start seeing that as I'm building my item plan in the product grid below. So one of the things that we'll often hear is, I can't see new and repeat, or on the flip side, you don't plan at the new and repeat, you just have a budget for the total offer. What we tell people to do is go to the view tab, and I'll show you on the next screen. There's a show/hide rows. So when you click on that, it'll give you an option to pick the budget grid or the summary grid. And you'll want to do both. So you're either wanting to see new and repeat or you're not, as well as you see the budget, you see the comparable offer, your item plan, and then the variance from your item plan to your budget. So there's two tabs, groups and types. So select or deselect the rows that you'd like to see on your screen. Simply apply and click OK. And this is user specific. So we wanted to just call that out. So if I want to see I want to see repeat new, but Linda does not, she can choose the options to make sure that they don't display. So it is user specific. All right, the next option to create a budget is the budget actual screen. So this is not as involved as the previous option is. We get on the left-hand screenshot that I have there, it does tell you to pull the comparable offer. It will default to the level of which you've set your budget layout to, as well as it will automatically pre-select all of these options. So if there are, for example, number of presentations that you're not utilizing presentations, so you could uncheck that. And then all you simply do is hit build, and it's going to build the budget for you using that comparable offer. So one thing that I do want to call out is when you use this option, we pop up a message that says, if you go ahead and build this and I click OK, it is going to completely overwrite or replace any budget that's been built for the offer previously. Now, if you are the sole person that manages this, you would know immediately whether that's an issue or not. Where it comes into play is if we have multiple people in there that are either responsible or are allowed to create the budgets. If they do click OK, it could create an issue. And so if I clicked OK, oops, I've now wiped out the work that someone has done to separate a previous budget for new and repeat. So just like to call that out. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Linda.
Thanks, Janine. I love the look on that little girl's face.
I know, isn't it? I know, she's so cute.
Anyway, so budgets can be entered, as Janine said, on our screens, and you've got a couple of different tools, but we do offer a budget upload process. And so this is a great tool, especially if you manage and enter your data outside of the system, maybe in a reporting system or some other financial system. So you have the ability that you can get at that data and you can easily upload that into our system using that budget upload. So you can format a file. You determine, there's a lot of fields that are available within the budget planning process. You determine which fields you need to and want to use. We only have a couple of fields at the very beginning, offer ID, year, and stuff that have to be completed, so we know where to put the data. But you determine those fields, you set your format, and once you upload and you format that file the first time, you don't ever have to repeat that process. So a report will also be generated after you upload that tells you whether the what was successful, which line items were successful, and if anything failed, you'll get a listing of what failed. So this is a topic that we actually covered in quite a bit of detail last month during our webinar. So we're not going to go into a lot of it today. If there's more information you want to see, we encourage you to go out to the support site or YouTube and listen and pull up the webinar from last month again.
Linda, this is typically a Excel file, right, or CSV?
Yeah, it has to be an Excel file. Yep.
Okay.
And if you go, when you go to the budget upload and you click browse, it'll give you a listing of templates that are available in case you don't have the listing. And you can start and then narrow it down to the fields you need. Good question. So another tool that we have within budgeting is the budget compare. So once you have entered your budget and you've gone in and done all your forecasting, you have the ability that you can compare how that budget is rolling up to your working actuals, and that data is available at the company level or offer level, and it can be seen by category. You can see it broken out into the new and repeat. We also offer a color auditing similar to all the other screens within our dashboard, where you can see in green, red, and yellow what is meeting your the various auditing standards. Oh, easy for me to say today. And so with, you can look at that very easily, determine what fields you need to look at where you have some disparities. One thing to point out though, that if you are using budgeting and you have the roll down flag set, so anytime you enter anything at the macro level, it's going to automatically roll that down. So it keeps your data in sync. So you may not see disparities if you're using roll down. In that case, you want to probably dig in and take a look at your mix information as to, is it breaking out by category and such correctly. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stuart, who can talk a little bit about budgets and publishing and go into the demo.
Thanks, Linda. As Linda mentioned before, the MAPS budget can be different from the macro budget or marketing budget. So here you see an offer. We have the MAPS budget at $925,000, but the macro budget was $850,000. We enabled this flexibility because sometimes merchants are building their budgets, and so it may be different, or there may be updates that are happening. So it should be close. In other words, your MAPS budget should be close to your marketing or macro budget, but it doesn't have to necessarily. If you don't create a budget, within MAPS itself, and you just have the macro budget, then you just have this macro budget. This has some implications with publishing. When we go to publishing, we look at the plan revenue against the forecast revenue, and we have the tolerance set. So this way, to be able to validate this offer, we have to make sure that the forecast and plan are within a particular tolerance. It becomes more important as you get closer to the drop date of the offers. So just one thing to point out is that this plan revenue will be taking the MAPS plan if you do plan in MAPS. And if you don't plan in MAPS, it'll take the macro. Just always remember that when you do update your budgets, you want to update both the macro and the MAPS budget. Update both of them if you do have that set up. Budgets also are an important part of projections. Automatic projections determine your percent complete, and then it determines the projected sales of your products. We look at actual demand divided by the macro to calculate the percent done. So here you see this is the offer performance screen in marketing, and we go in there and we could look at the different offers. I see the actual revenue and I see the macro revenue. Divide that and we get that percent done or percent complete. So this offer is close to 20% done. All the products, unless they're on a different type of curve and you're using different types of projection method, will be using that 20% done to determine the projected sales. Just be sure to update that macro. In this top section, this is the single offer forecast showing the percent complete and the planned revenue. So just make sure to update those when you get updates from marketing or when you're reviewing actual results. If the sales are coming in higher or lower, you may want to make those changes to the macro itself. There's a number of different reports that you could run. Instead of the reports, you could just export the MAPS planning screen to Excel. So when you're on the MAPS planning screen, you could export it to Excel. You'll get one tab for the offer and one tab for the categories, and you'll be able to see the budget, the item forecast, comparables, and the variance, any variance between the forecast and the budget. But there's also a few DRS reports. There's this F-plan budget. It shows the budget at different hierarchy levels for an offer. So we'll show the budget for category, subcategory, and offer, plus other information. And then this forecast offer version. This shows you at a top level the different offers, and you could run it for different versions. Here I did it for the working version, but I'll be able to see the macros, circulation, units, revenue, as well as the forecast units and revenue, number of products, and other things. So number of different reports that you could use to review budgets. And with that, I'm going to go into a sample dashboard and we'll build a budget. Here is the MAPS planning screen. Here's a particular offer that I set up already. You see it's plan status 1. Plan status 1 puts the offer into MAPS. So all of these offers are plan status 1 or greater. You could actually right click, go to plan status, and you may have different definitions for this. You could set up in marketing. Here you could say final assortment, at different levels. So as you're building the budget, you could do different levels. But anything between 1, and we're getting a thing here not to decrease the plan status. This is just a warning of basically procedures. But as long as the plan status is between 1 and 7, you will see it in MAPS. Here you could see no category records, but we have the macro. I have the revenue set up at 802,000 and the units at 21,000. We spoke about the configuration. If I go in here to the view, I could go into levels. You could see that I budgeted this at category and products. I skipped that step just to build this offer, but when I first went in here, I said build it at the category level. But you could always change the viewing layout to any of these. But right now, the first thing I'm going to do is to add a comparable. So here you see comparables, add edit. I click here. I would go in to a particular offer, let's say a similar offer. Here I'm in April 2011. We have an old sample dashboard, but I could go to 2010. I go to April B, and I could look for actual sales. Again, it doesn't have to be actual, and you could take more than one version. You could take a number of different offers, but it's good to be able to look, to build your budget, to look at actual sales of these products. So I hit save. It's going to build the data. It shouldn't take that long, depending on the size of it. So here you see it built the comparable. Here's the comparable offer. It shows the number of products and the units. Let me go down to the tree here. You notice here we have all of these different categories. The X's here is because there's no item selected for it, and we have no budget set for this. But those are the different categories that were there in the comparable. So this does two things. It brings in this comparable information to set the budget, and we could also go down to the product level and see those products from the comparable offer and maybe assort and add it to here. So here is our comparable offer, number of products. Here's the summary section. Now my choice now is I could go in and create the budget. Now since I have actual sales, I could build this off of actuals. It'll select the comparable, and that's the one that I used, that April 2010. I'll build it to category, and then here's the things that are created. I might not have number of presentations. I might not want a budget to contribution margin, may not want a budget to cancellations. That's your choice. And then here I am going to set the roll down flag. So I'm going to click build. I do get that warning saying this will replace any current budgets for the selected offer with the actual version only. Click OK to continue, and it'll build those budget records. And it does it pretty quick. So here you see I have this budget, and I have it also created at each of these different levels. So if I go down to, let's say here, I have this budget that's created here. The number of products, the units, and revenue, the system does that based on the actual sales from the comparable. So it'll look at this particular offer, and you could see that the comparable at the top level, you know, the dollars are different, the units are different. It'll build the same number of products, but what it does is it scales it. So it will look and say, well, category A did this percent of the comparable, we'll set it up with the same percent. So you can see how the revenue is close to there. And we have the setup for new, repeat, and total. Down here, you could see the summary section by category. And then the variance, and that's a variance between your item plan and your budget. Very important once you start building these offers and go in to make sure that you are within that budget. You don't want to over forecast items, so this way you are able to stay within that budget. I could go in and make changes here if I wanted to. So if I go in, I could change this, say change the number of products here, 850. Notice that as I change, the products are changing down here. It's the same here. If I want to pick up revenue, I could do that. It's split between new and repeat. It'll do that automatically based on the comparable split. And it's also updating the revenue here. So take a look as I do this. You can see the units here are going to adjust. And that's because I have the roll down flag checked. All right. So the other thing you could do at different levels is if you're not doing budget actuals, we could go to that create edit. And I am going to save the data. So here I could select the comparable itself, which was that April B offer. It'll show me And then I have the choice of adjusting the budget. Now, here I have the new budget as a lot of products. I think for most companies, they're going to have a lot more repeats. One way to do this is you could actually click and drag this here. So here I have the total budget. I could say to use it, revenue, gross margin percent, let's say number of pages, and let's say for new, I want to use 25%. I could put 25 in there. That should copy down here also. It should copy down here also. Well, let me see, there we go. And so as it selects it, I could see the preliminary results here. So you see here, number of products was 850. I want to do 25%. So I'm going to make the new budget 213. Basically, you make the new budget 25% of the total. And then I could come here, and then I could accept and exit. And now you can see that I have now my new budget, repeat, and total. So this is another way you would go in. You'd probably go into each category, and you would go in and you would do the create, edit the budget, because you may want to start making changes here at the category level between new and repeat, or just in total. Like I said, you could go in here and change anything here in the white section. If I took out the roll down flag, well, and the reason is you may want to make adjustments at lower levels, possibly. But let's say I change that and I up this to like 950,000. Okay, and I change the units, 35,000. Look at the units here. They did not change. It's because I don't have the roll down. So in most cases, as you're changing the budget at the higher level, you want that budget to roll down into the other levels, the categories and subcategories. But you don't have to necessarily do that. I'm going to go in there and save that. Now I could go into that budget compare, and then I'll be able to see here, hey, look how this is different between my top level and my categories. So the red is showing us all of the difference here. We might want to go in here and start picking up these, but you may want to do it for certain categories. There are certain categories you may want to increase. Maybe this dressing category you want to increase. So you go here and make the change here, and then not have that roll down. And that's where you could look at that roll down and roll up. Okay, any questions on it? That's pretty much the basics of the budgeting process. Let me just reduce this and go back to the presentation. Of course, from the current slide. Okay, Megan, did we have any questions come through?
No, nothing come through at this point now.
All right, let's talk about next month.
Okay. So next month in January, we will be starting this up again, and we will be reviewing the marketing offer setup review and going through that whole process of setting up an offer within the marketing module. And that is January 28th at 3 p.m. So we'll pick up our webinars then. We are hoping and wishing you all a happy holiday and happy new year, and we look forward to seeing you all in 2021. Thank you.